Once, homes had wheels, but hearts stayed in one place. Do you remember? A hazy morning? A metal lawn chair on a small porch, laundry swaying? An old car door closing with that classic 70s clang? In the America of the 1970s, far from the noise of the cities, there was another world. A world where life wasn't measured by square footage, but by warm conversations, shared meals, and neighbors who truly knew each other. Trailer parks, little homes with little kitchens, but somehow they held the biggest memories. Every morning began with the sound of a tiny radio buzzing to life, the smell of fresh coffee drifting through open screen doors, and small handwritten notes left by neighbors that simply said, "Need anything?" Soft film grain over children riding their bikes, a dog barking faintly. For those who grew up in trailer parks, these places weren't just somewhere to live. They were a family, a community woven together by simple kindness. Summer evenings smelled like backyard BBQs. Kids ran freely from one trailer to the next. And everyone looked out for one another. Meanwhile, America was changing. The oil crisis, new jobs, shifting towns. But inside the trailer parks, life kept a steady rhythm. Humble, warm, connected. In this video, we're going back there. Back to the mornings that felt slower. The kitchens that felt smaller but somehow fuller. The porches that held a whole neighborhood's stories. Back to a time when the little things meant everything. If you're ready, our journey begins now. Let's return to the heart of the 1970s, to the unforgettable world of trailer park life. Let's go back. Even before people stepped outside, the park began waking up in layers. The first layer was always the air. Cool, gentle, fresh, carrying the smell of damp earth and yesterday's barbecue smoke. The second layer was sound, a screen door slamming somewhere across the lot, the soft rumble of an old Ford idling, a distant laugh drifting from a porch. And the third layer was people. People who weren't wealthy, maybe weren't always confident, but who knew how to start each morning with a little strength. Many of them worked long hours, factory shifts, diner jobs, mechanics, farmhands, truckers, jobs that didn't make headlines but kept America going. And before they stepped out into the world, there was always a moment, just a moment, where they looked around their small kitchen and felt grateful for the roof over their head, even if that roof was metal and shook in the wind. Inside those narrow hallways and tiny kitchens, families created whole worlds. The checkerboard linoleum floors, the avocado green appliances, the humming refrigerator with magnets holding school photos and grocery lists. These were the small details you don't notice until they're gone. A mom might be pouring milk into a bowl of cereal while a child ties their shoelaces. The TV playing a morning cartoon so fuzzy you had to smack the side of the set. A dad might be shaving in a cramped bathroom, steam fogging the mirror, thinking about bills, work, tomorrow, but still stopping long enough to kiss his kid on the head before heading out. It was tight, it was imperfect, but it was real. By late morning, the trailer park came fully alive. The smell of fresh cut, grass drifted through the air as someone pushed a loud old lawnmower over patchy yards. Kids gathered in groups, inventing games out of nothing. A cracked football, a chalk line on the pavement, a jump rope made from tied together strings. And there was always that one trailer, the one everyone knew. Maybe it belonged to a kind older lady who baked too many cookies, or a war veteran who fixed everyone's bikes, or a single mother raising 3 kids with more courage than she ever realized. Every trailer park had those quiet heroes. Neighbors didn't judge each other. They couldn't. They lived too close not to understand one another. If someone failed, people helped. If someone succeeded, the whole park celebrated. If someone cried, someone else heard it, and often came knocking with a warm plate of food, or just a few minutes of company. And every so often, life delivered moments that stuck forever. A birthday celebrated outside around a picnic table. A teenager learning to fix their first car with help from half the neighborhood. A summer night movie projected on a white sheet hung between 2 trailers. Moments that even 40 or 50 years later, people still remember with a tightness in their chest. As afternoon sunlight hit the aluminum siding, The trailers glowed with that soft golden hue that made the whole park look like something from a family photo album. A little faded but full of soul. It wasn't a perfect life, but it was a life full of moments that mattered. And for so many who lived there, that simplicity, that closeness, that feeling of being part of something small but meaningful, that's what they missed the most. Evenings in a 1970s trailer park weren't just a time of day. They were the real heartbeat of the community. If mornings were the quiet breath before life began, then evenings were where that life unfolded. Slowly, warmly, and with the kind of genuine closeness that people spend decades longing to feel again. As the sun dipped low, the park transformed. Shadows stretched across gravel roads. The aluminum walls of the trailers turned shades of gold and orange, and the smell of dinner drifted from one home to the next. Fried chicken, meatloaf, grilled hot dogs, corn on the cob, each scent blending together like memories overlapping. Kids who had spent the entire day exploring every inch of the park returned in dusty, laughing waves. Some carried baseball gloves. Others dragged sticks they had turned into pretend swords. Others held melting popsicles bought from the ice cream truck that visited the park right after 5 p.m. every day, a ritual as dependable as the sunset itself. And while the kids gathered in the shared spaces, the adults began their own evening routines. Some sat on folding chairs outside their trailers, the metal creaking under them as they leaned back. Boots off, cold drink in hand, listening to the familiar hum of the cicadas and the soft rumble of passing cars on the nearby highway. Others stood in small clusters, talking about their day, their jobs, their worries, but always with a touch of humor, because in trailer parks, humor wasn't a decoration. It was survival, a way of saying, we'll be okay, even if today was hard. At dinner time, the whole park vibrated with life. Screen doors swung open and shut. Parents called their kids in with voices that echoed across lots. A dog barked. Someone dropped a plate. Someone else laughed so loudly their neighbor shouted, "You better share the joke." The smell of charcoal grills rose into the air, mixing with the faint sweetness of laundry dried earlier in the day. Families ate outside whenever they could. Picnic tables covered with mismatched tablecloths, plastic cups filled with sweet tea, radios playing soft country tunes that blended with the voices of friends. And that was the magic of it. Even if you didn't have much, you always had someone to sit with, someone to talk to, someone who knew your story. Not the pieces you told, but the parts they witnessed every single day. And then there were the evenings that felt almost sacred. Like summer nights when fireflies filled the air, blinking over lawns and gravel like tiny lanterns guiding kids back to their porches. Or when someone brought out a guitar, strumming chords under the dim porch light, playing songs older than most of the kids listening. People would gather quietly, some humming along, others tapping their feet, all of them wrapped in a feeling that's hard to describe. A feeling that no matter how small their home was, their hearts had room to breathe. And then there were the storms. In the 70s, summer storms could arrive without warning. Dark clouds rolled in fast, wind pushing through the trees, aluminum siding rattling like a drum. Parents hurried to bring in laundry, kids grabbed toys left outside, and neighbors shouted across lots, "Storm's coming! You all good over there?" As the first drops hit the metal roofs, that sound, that unmistakable sharp rhythmic tapping, filled the entire park. Inside the trailers, families gathered together. Lights flickered, radios cut in and out. But there was something comforting in that chaos, because you knew the neighbors were right there, listening to the same storm, ready to help if anything went wrong. If a trailer shook too hard, someone knocked on the door. If the power went out, someone brought over candles. If a child got scared, a neighbor's comforting voice could be heard through the thin walls saying, "It's all right, sweetheart. Storm will pass soon." And somehow, those wild nights brought everyone closer, because in the dark, with rain pounding the rooftops, people remembered what truly mattered. Not money, not status, not how big your home was, but who would show up for you when the world got loud. When the storm cleared, the night smelled of wet earth and hope. Kids ran outside barefoot, splashes echoing through puddles, while adults stepped onto their porches, breathing in the fresh air like it washed the whole day clean. Some of the best conversations happened right then. In the cool quiet after a storm, people shared stories, fears, dreams, not because they planned to, but because evenings in a trailer park made honesty feel natural. And that's the part people never forget. The evenings when the whole world felt small, but your heart felt full. The evenings when every light in every trailer felt like a reminder. You're not alone. The evenings that stitched strangers into family, one soft moment at a time. Growing up in a 1970s trailer park was unlike growing up anywhere else. If you lived it, you can still feel it. Not just remember it, feel it in your bones, like a song that never left you. For a child, the park wasn't small, it was endless. The gravel roads were highways. The narrow paths between trailers were secret trails. The open lots were ball fields, battlegrounds, kingdoms. Kids didn't need toys made of plastic and lights. They had imagination, and imagination was always bigger than anything money could buy. There was a freedom there, a kind of freedom kids today may never fully understand. You woke up, grabbed your bike, maybe the one with bent handlebars, maybe the one missing the left pedal, and you rode, not to a destination but to possibility. The sun was a clock, your stomach was the timer, and the only rule your parents had was simple. Be home before the porch lights come on. Those lights, the soft yellow porch lights glowing at dusk, were more than bulbs. They were boundaries. They were safety. They were home calling you back. But before that moment came, the day belonged entirely to you. Kids raced through the park like small tornadoes of joy, collecting memories the way other kids collected baseball cards, a scraped knee from climbing a fence that was obviously too high, a belly laugh that hit so hard it made your ribs hurt, a secret whispered under a tree, a dare you shouldn't have taken, but did anyway, a crush you didn't understand, but couldn't stop thinking about. And all around them, the park watched, not with judgment, but with protection. Adults didn't hover. They didn't track every move. They trusted the community, and the community rose to meet that trust. Every adult was someone's parent, and in a way, everyone was everyone's parent. If you misbehaved at lot 14, your mom knew about it before you even made it back home. If you fell and skinned your knee near lot 6, somebody's grandmother patched you up with a wet cloth, kissed your forehead, and sent you back outside like a tiny soldier. If you went missing for 5 minutes, even 5 minutes, a chain reaction started. Did you see him? He was just here. I'll check the back lot. Go look near the bikes. There was no fear in that search, just love. A love woven through the cracks of gravel roads, shining through the thin trailer windows, floating in the evening air. And in the middle of that love, kids learned who they were. They learned resilience, because you had to be tough to grow up on roads that could skin your elbows in a second. They learned bravery, because no one wanted to be the kid who backed out of a dare. They learned generosity, because if one kid got a new toy, everyone played with it. They learned loyalty, because friendships in trailer parks weren't temporary. They were carved into your childhood like initials scratched into a tree. And maybe the most important thing they learned was wonder. Wonder from fireflies caught in glass jars. Wonder from chasing the ice cream truck barefoot. Wonder from lying on warm trailer roofs at night, counting stars you thought were close enough to touch. Wonder from feeling the whole world inside a tiny community. And it stayed with them, long after they grew up, long after they moved away, long after life got complicated. Because childhood in a trailer park wasn't about what you had. It was about what you lived. It was about the bruises, the laughter, the friendships, the freedom, the sense that the world was small enough to hold you and big enough to explore. When people look back today, when they close their eyes and let their minds drift to those days, they don't remember the size of the trailer. They don't remember what they lacked. They remember how alive everything felt, how loud the days were, how soft the nights became, how safe the shadows were, how sweet the summers tasted. They remember being young in a place that taught them You don't need much to make a life worth remembering. And that's why those childhoods, those summer afternoons, those gravel roads, those friendships forged in simple moments remain unforgettable. Not just memories, but pieces of who they still are. When the sun finally dipped behind the rows of faded aluminum rooftops, the trailer park shifted into a different kind of world. One drenched in softness, slowness, and a strangely comforting quiet. Daytime in the trailer park belonged to noise. The loud hum of old window AC units, kids racing their bikes over gravel, someone slamming a screen door every 5 minutes, dogs barking like they were announcing the start of a parade. But nighttime belonged to memory, to breath, to the quieter truths of life that only showed themselves once the heat faded and the sky turns a deep bruised purple. The first lights to flicker on with a tiny porch, bulbs, the kind bought from discount stores, glowing just warm enough to chase away the dark. They scattered across the park like tiny constellations on gravel roads. Behind each light was a story, a family finishing dinner, a father fixing things that couldn't wait, a lonely soul staring at the sky, wondering how life had turned out this way. Children who had spent their entire day playing barefoot now chased fireflies with mason jars. Their small silhouettes bounced between trailers, their laughter mixing with the soft buzz of insects in the summer air. Every time a firefly blinked inside a jar, the kids gasped like they had captured a star. And watching from porches, tired parents couldn't help but smile, because in those small lights, they saw something they had lost long ago. Wonder. From Lot 22 came the familiar crackle of Earl's old radio. Predictable, endearing, and somehow comforting. Earl never missed a night. His playlist was a patchwork of American country history. Hank Williams drifting through weak speakers, Patsy Cline echoing into the breeze, Willie Nelson humming like a lullaby. The radio sounded like it was barely holding itself together, filled with static and age, but everyone in the park secretly waited for it. Earl's music was the trailer, park's version of a church bell signaling that the day had ended. Down the road, a group of neighbors gathered on a sagging wooden porch. The porch leaned more every year, but they swore it was still good enough. They shared cheap beer, the kind that sweats instantly in humid night air, passing cans from hand to hand as if they were passing time itself. The talk was simple. Whose truck broke down? Whose kid got in trouble at school? Who was late on rent again? But beneath those conversations, there was something deeper, an unspoken bond, the kind built only through years of shared struggles and borrowed tools. Further across the park, a young mother rocked her baby in a second-hand chair, its wooden frame groaning like it had lived through generations of stories. Her trailer's thin walls did little to keep warmth in, but the soft lamplight wrapped the tiny room in a glow that made everything feel gentler. With every sway of the rocking chair, her baby's tiny breaths synchronized with the rhythm of the night. Outside, the world felt uncertain. Inside, she held a fragile kind of peace, one that only mothers in small places understand. A teenage boy hunched over a cluttered table in another trailer, sketching dreams with a single pen that barely had ink left. He drew the things he wished for: cars with glossy paint, cities shining with neon lights, places where he didn't have to explain where he came from. Each drawing was a tiny rebellion against the life he was born into. He wasn't ashamed of the trailer park, but somewhere deep inside he hoped for more, and the quiet nights gave him space to imagine it. An elderly couple sat side by side on a threadbare sofa, illuminated only by the flickering light of a decades-old TV. They watched reruns of shows from a time when life felt simpler. They didn't say much, but the silence between them was easy, earned through years of holding on to each other, despite everything life took from them. Their trailer was old, patched together by decades of DIY repairs, but it held memories the way other people's mansions held paintings. As the clock crept toward midnight, the park settled into its slow, steady breathing. Street cats wandered between trash cans. A dog barked once and then gave up. Porch swings rocked in the breeze. The moonlight made the aluminum trailers shine with a blue glow, turning them into quiet guardians of the people who slept inside. The outside world rarely thought about places like this. Most people passed by trailer parks without looking, or looked with judgment instead of curiosity. But those who lived inside these small metal homes carried lives filled with resilience, tenderness and grit. They knew what it meant to help a neighbor, because someday they'd need help too. They knew what it felt like to celebrate small victories, an AC that finally worked, a car that started after 3 tries, a bill paid on time. Trailer park nights weren't glamorous, but they were raw and real, full of moments that stitched people together, moments of quiet bravery, moments of warmth, moments of life lived close to the ground, close to each other, and close to the truth. And in that hush between sunset and dawn, the trailer park felt less like a place and more like a shared heartbeat, an echo of struggle, hope, and the stubborn belief that even here, even in this forgotten corner of America, life still held beauty. What made a 1970s trailer park unforgettable wasn't the trailers themselves. It wasn't the gravel roads, or the tiny yards, or the rusted metal siding that rattled during storms. It was the people, the community, the invisible web of shared lives and shared struggles that held everything together like stitching on a patchwork quilt. And the thing about that community was simple. It didn't just exist. It lived. It breathed. It showed up. Most neighborhoods in America had fences. Trailer parks had none. The absence of fences wasn't accidental. It was symbolic. Every life was open to the next. Kids flowed in and out of each other's trailers like water. Adults shared coffee, tools, stories, and burdens without ever needing to ask. You didn't knock on doors here. You yelled from the porch, "You home?" And someone always answered. During the mornings, the soundscape was almost comforting. Screen doors squeaking open, the thump of someone shaking out a rug, radios tuned to local stations, and the steady laugh of women gathering outside for a quick chat before their day began. Laundry lines swayed in the light breeze, white shirts, denim jeans, a kid's superhero towel faded from too many washes. It wasn't fancy, but it was real. It was life. Kids roamed in groups like tiny adventurers. They invented games with broken toys, rolled tires down hills, and built castles out of mud and cardboard scraps. They didn't need theme parks or brand new toys. They had imagination, they had open space, and they had each other. And the mothers, who were half exhausted, half amused, always kept one ear open, ready to step outside the moment the crying started. Then there were the afternoon gatherings, unplanned, unorganized but somehow consistent. Someone would pull out a lawn chair, then another neighbor would join, and before long, you'd have 5 or 6 adults sitting in a half circle, talking about everything and nothing, life's troubles, gossip from down the road, who got a new job, whose car got repossessed, who was falling in love, who was falling apart. Secrets weren't really secrets in a trailer park, but somehow they were protected. People talked, yes, but they also cared. Somewhere in the mix there was always a park. Mom, the woman who became the heart of everything. Without ever trying, she remembered every kid's birthday, knew who was behind on rent, who needed a ride to work, who was going through a hard time. She didn't have much money, but she always had food to offer, advice to give, and a kind of soft, steady strength that made the entire community feel anchored. And every trailer park had a handyman, someone who fixed things just because they could. In this park, Frank was the fixer of all broken things. Broken toaster? He'd fix it. Radio full of static? He'd take it apart with a screwdriver he kept in his back pocket. Car engine coughing smoke? He'd crawl under it without hesitation. Some people called Frank a hero. He said he just liked tinkering with stuff. But the truth was, he understood the unspoken rule of trailer park life. When you had a skill, you used it for the good of everyone, not just yourself. There was also the woman who made the best pies in the world, destined never to be famous, but always remembered. Her pies showed up at every gathering, at every celebration, at every moment of grief. No one asked how she afforded the ingredients. They just knew she had a talent and a big heart, and somehow that was enough. Teenagers formed their own world within the world. They hung out by the boundary where the woods met the park, carving their initials into tree trunks, sharing dreams of leaving and fears of staying. They talked about the kind of lives they wanted. Fast cars, big cities, bright futures. Some made it out, some didn't. But those nights under the stars stayed with them forever. Long after the woods were replaced by shopping centers and memories faded into nostalgia. And perhaps the most beautiful part of trailer park community, life happened when someone fell, when someone hit rock bottom, because unlike the outside world, where failure was often met with silence or distance, trailer parks leaned in. People showed up with groceries, envelopes of small bills quietly slipped into mailboxes, casseroles left at doors, kids taken in for the night to give parents space to breathe. It wasn't charity, it was love, hard, gritty, humble love, the kind that didn't need to be announced or celebrated. On warm nights, the community spirit was almost physical. People brought out guitars, harmonicas, and whatever instruments they had. Someone would start a song and the rest would join in. Kids danced barefoot in the dirt. Adults clapped along. The sound of music, raw, imperfect, heartfelt, floated through the park like smoke from a campfire. It was hope put into melody. That was the magic of the trailer park. It took ordinary people living ordinary lives and made them extraordinary simply because they lived them together. Even decades later, people who grew up in these parks remember every inch of them, not because the place was perfect, but because the people were unforgettable. The laughter, the noise, the chaos, the closeness, the love, they lingered in the air long after the trailers were gone. Trailer parks weren't rich in money, but they were rich in connection, rich in community, rich in moments that stayed with you forever. And that's why people still miss them. Not the buildings, not the gravel, not the old metal siding, but the humanity inside them. Life in a 1970s trailer park wasn't just about community, laughter, or shared moments under the sun. Beneath the warm conversations and neighborly gestures lived a deeper truth, one that shaped every day, every decision, every dream. It was the quiet, constant struggle to make ends meet, a struggle carried with dignity, with resilience, and with a kind of stubborn hope that only people who lived close to the edge truly understood. Back then, many trailer park residents worked long, heavy jobs, factory lines, construction sites, diners, gas stations, cleaning gigs, farm shifts before sunrise. These weren't glamorous careers. These were the jobs that kept America running while breaking the bodies of the people doing them. And every weekday morning, long before the sun rose, the park came alive with the sounds of engines starting, boots crunching gravel, and screen doors slamming behind tired parents rushing to work. Men climbed into old pickups that rattled like they were held together by sheer willpower. Women tied their hair back, slipped into worn uniforms, and left for early morning shifts at diners where they'd pour thousands of cups of coffee before noon. Teenagers took after-school jobs, bagging groceries or washing cars, knowing their paychecks weren't for fun, they were for bills, for groceries, for their families. Money was always tight, always. Rent, gas, school supplies, medical bills. Every dollar was stretched like a rubber band, ready to snap. People weren't saving for vacations. They were saving for emergencies they hoped wouldn't come. Yet somehow through creativity and grit, they survived. They bartered. They shared. They fixed what broke instead of buying new. They learned to live small without living any less. Every family had a system. Some kept cookie tins full of spare coins. Others taped envelopes to the inside of kitchen drawers labeled rent, gas, groceries, school. Every payday, the envelopes filled slowly, painfully unevenly. Money shuffled from one to another depending on which crisis arrived that week. And crises always came: a blown tire, a sick child, a layoff at the local plant. But the truth was, in trailer parks, you didn't face these moments alone. When someone lost their job, word spread fast, not through gossip but through concern. neighbors showed up with casseroles, sandwiches, bags of groceries, or envelopes with a few dollars tucked inside. Just until you're back on your feet, they'd say, even if they themselves were barely standing. Helping someone wasn't charity. It was insurance. It was the knowledge that in a place where life could collapse overnight, you needed each other to stay upright. Trailer parks were full of side hustles long before side hustle was ever a word. People sold homemade crafts, fixed cars for cheap, babysat each other's kids, mowed lawns, baked pies, cleaned houses, and worked second shifts when their bodies begged them not to. Everyone had a skill. Everyone found a way to contribute. Kids even pitched in, returning bottles for deposits, mowing lawns with rusty push mowers, selling lemonade on hot days for money that usually went straight to the family grocery fund. Economic hardship also forged emotional strength. It taught people to celebrate small victories. A raise of 50 cents, a working heater in winter, a surprise overtime shift, a car that lasted one more month. Every bit of luck, no matter how tiny, felt like a win. And when someone finally paid off a debt or bought something new, even something simple like a pair of shoes or a toaster, the whole park felt proud. Despite the struggles, there was a quiet beauty to the way people carried their burdens. They didn't brag. They didn't complain loudly. They didn't pretend life was easy, but they faced it with grit, with humor, with a shared understanding that survival wasn't about standing tall, it was about standing together. At night, when workers returned home, exhaustion settled in like a second skin, but evenings still held warmth. Fathers grilled cheap burgers on charcoal grills. Mothers folded laundry on porches, chatting with neighbors. Kids played until darkness swallowed the sky. The sound of laughter, clinking bottles, and low conversation drifted across the park like a balm. It didn't erase the hardship, but it softened it. And that was the duality of trailer park life in the 1970s. People faced some of the hardest challenges of their lives, yet they created some of the most meaningful moments in the middle of that struggle. They endured, they adapted, they kept going, not because life was easy, but because they had each other. Even decades later, those who grew up in these parks remember that truth with bittersweet clarity. They remember their parents' tired faces, their neighbors' kindness, the sound of early morning engines sputtering to life, and the feeling of survival earned together, one hard day at a time. That's why the memories last, not because everything was perfect, but because everything was real. By the mid-1970s, the winds of change were no longer just a background hum in America. They were a force shaping everyday life, culture, and even the way people saw their future. Neon lights flickered across growing cities, casting bright reflections on storefront windows, gas stations, and late-night diners. These glowing signs didn't just illuminate the streets. They symbolized a new rhythm that the country was learning to dance to. People were spending more time outside their homes, exploring new entertainment options, and embracing a lifestyle that blended excitement, curiosity, and constant motion. Shopping malls were becoming the new social hubs, huge, climate-controlled worlds where families spent weekends. Teens wandered freely with sodas in hand, and store windows displayed the latest fashion trends. Bowling alleys echoed with laughter and the clatter of pins. Drive-in theaters drew crowds who watched movies under the stars from the comfort of their cars, sharing popcorn and soda while the giant screen lit up the night sky. Arcade parlors, buzzing with electronic beeps and flashing lights, captured the imagination of young people who suddenly felt like the future was sitting right in front of them. A cultural divide was forming, especially among the youth. On one side were the rock and roll dreamers who embraced rebellion, guitars, and the raw energy of live concerts. On the other side were disco lovers, captivated by shimmering outfits, mirror balls, and the irresistible beat pulsing through crowded dance floors. Yet despite their differences, these two worlds fed off each other's energy. Music charts evolved rapidly. Radio stations played hits non-stop, and Billboard lists shifted every week as new stars rose to fame. Pop culture became the heartbeat of the era, shaping fashion, language, and even the attitude of an entire generation. Economic uncertainties were also shaping day-to-day life. Rising prices pushed families to be more careful with spending, but this challenge sparked innovation. Manufacturers began creating more affordable home appliances, simpler automobiles, and new forms of household technology designed for efficiency. Color televisions improved dramatically, turning living rooms into home theaters. Families gathered at night to watch sitcoms, game shows, and news broadcasts, creating shared experiences that defined the decade. Magazines showcased futuristic home gadgets, promoting the idea that modern convenience was not just a luxury. It was the new norm. Inside American homes, the structure of family life was evolving. Traditional roles were being questioned as more women entered the workforce, balancing careers and home responsibilities with determination and resilience. Children enjoyed more independence, roaming neighborhoods on bicycles, exploring parks, and forming friendships that felt bigger than life. Schools introduced new teaching methods that encouraged creativity, debate, and self-expression, shifting away from rigid old systems. These educational changes planted the seeds for a more confident and outspoken generation, one that would influence the cultural landscape for decades to come. Communities themselves reflected this transformation. Neighborhoods turned into melting pots of different styles, ideas, and ambitions. Block parties filled summer evenings with music and barbecue smoke. Local sports leagues brought families together, cheering from the sidelines as kids played baseball or football under the warm sun. People felt both uncertain about the future and excited by possibilities. This mix of fear and hope created a unique emotional tone, one that defined the 1970s as a decade of transition, exploration, and reinvention. And through all of this, the American spirit remained unmistakably present. Bold, restless, and always reaching for the next chapter. In the heart of every 1970s trailer park, there was a constant, unmistakable soundtrack. The laughter of children. It cut through the hum of old refrigerators, outlasted the squeak of screen doors, and echoed louder than the clatter of gravel beneath worn sneakers. Children didn't wait for fancy playgrounds or organized games. They made the world around them their own universe. Rusted bicycles became race cars. Tin cans were transformed into drums. Cracked sidewalks and dusty roads turned into racetracks. Forts and battlefields. Imagination had no limits, and freedom stretched as wide as the gravel paths winding between trailers. Morning light brought bursts of energy. Kids bolted out of trailers, socks mismatched, hair sticking up in every direction, carrying tiny treasures that meant the world to them. A shiny rock, a jar of fireflies blinking softly, or a stick that had somehow become a magic wand. Every day held potential for discovery. Every alley, every porch, every patch of dirt was a kingdom to explore. Parents, even while still groggy from early shifts, watched from porches or leaned out of screen doors, their hearts softening at the sight of pure, unfiltered joy. There was a secret kind of envy in those smiles, envy of the courage and curiosity that only childhood could allow. Teenagers, meanwhile, had carved out their own hidden worlds within the park. They gathered on porches, leaned against the sides of trailers, or hid in shaded corners. Records spun on turntables inside trailers, sending the latest hits and all. Favorites drifting across the gravel like invisible threads connecting everyone. They wrote in worn notebooks, etched initials into wooden fences, and whispered dreams about lives far beyond the park's boundaries. Some spoke of bright cities, fast cars, or a future that felt almost unreachable. Yet even in uncertainty, there was hope, and hope in the hearts of the young carried energy that kept the entire community alive, reminding everyone that dreams, even small ones, mattered. Weekends were an explosion of life. The park became a vast playground for kids and teens alike. They invented games with nothing but imagination and the simplest objects. A ball, a tire, a piece of chalk, or a stick. Children chased one another across lawns, shrieked with laughter, and collapsed in the shade of trailers, gasping for breath but smiling all the same. Teenagers played informal sports, taught each other guitar chords, or simply sat on porches, sharing stories and first crushes. Adults participated when they could. flipping burgers on small charcoal grills, tossing frisbees or leaning back in lawn chairs, soaking in the soundtrack of youth that filled the air. The smells of sizzling hot dogs, cut grass, and the faint tang of early summer rain lingered, reminding everyone that life, even in simplicity, was beautiful. As dusk turned to night, the park didn't quiet down. It transformed. Porch lights flickered on like tiny moons, casting soft glows on the cracked siding of trailers. Shadows danced on walls and streets as children played tag under the moonlight. Teens whispered dreams, shared secrets, or laughed quietly in corners. Parents leaned on doorframes or porch railings, feeling a mixture of relief and pride as they watched their families thrive in the simple magic of the evening. Voices carried across gravel paths, snippets of conversation, laughter, and music blending into a symphony of community life. Even in darkness, the trailers seemed alive. Open windows let out smells of dinner and baked goods. A soft radio played distant tunes in one trailer while laughter spilled from another. Somewhere, a dog barked and was answered by a child's giggle. The night was not empty. It was filled with presence, warmth, and the invisible threads that wove every life together. It was in these fleeting, everyday moments, the shared games, whispered dreams, and communal laughter, that the true heartbeat of trailer park life revealed itself. Children's joy was the glue. Teens' dreams were the fuel. Adults' quiet watchfulness and care were the scaffolding that held it all together. The park was more than trailers and gravel roads. It was a living, breathing community, defined by the people, their connections, and the love that passed quietly from one generation to the next. And decades later, those who grew up here remember it with bittersweet clarity. They remember the freedom of running barefoot across the gravel, the smell of summer rains, the warmth of neighbors leaning on porch railings, and the knowledge that no matter what, they belonged somewhere. It wasn't about wealth, fame, or recognition. It was about connection. It was about joy. It was about growing up in a place where the world felt bigger, brighter, and kinder than anywhere else could ever be. As the sun sank below the horizon, golden light stretched across aluminum rooftops. The trailer park settled into a hush, almost sacred. Days had been loud, chaotic, full of work, play, laughter, and struggle. But nights reminded everyone what truly mattered. The soft glow of porch lights, the hum of radios, the scent of summer rain, all carried a permanence no trailer could hold. Decades could pass, but these memories, they never faded. Every gravel road, every creaking screen door, every laughter-filled corner held stories that refused to be forgotten. Children racing barefoot carried freedom in their hearts. Teens dreaming under stars carried hope into adulthood. Parents working tirelessly left a legacy of love, courage, resilience. Neighbors helping, celebrating, leaning on each other, formed bonds that distance and time could never break. Trailer parks weren't just homes. They were living communities, built on shared struggles, shared victories, shared humanity. Here every life mattered, every laugh echoed, every sorrow softened by someone else's care. Even those who left, moved to cities, suburbs, distant states, still carried these lessons. Fireflies blinking in jars, late-night porch talks, the smell of bacon frying in the morning, the hum of radios playing country tunes, friends who became family, neighbors who became mentors, moments that became anchors for life. Decades later, a smile comes naturally, tinged with longing, warm with gratitude. Trailer park life shaped them in ways nothing else could. It taught resilience. It taught community. It taught that happiness is found in small, fleeting, everyday moments, shared with people who truly care. Trailer parks weren't perfect. Life wasn't perfect. But in those aluminum homes, on gravel paths, in sunlit mornings and moonlit nights, something magical happened. People lived fully. They connected deeply. They loved without reservation. That magic, quiet, persistent, unforgettable, remains in memory. Some places aren't just homes. Some places are heartbeats. For those who lived them, trailer parks were exactly that.